Oh, yeah. So Patrick, you're definitely in the place with the hottest weather today, I think it's safe to say. How is it? Or is it rainy
Yeah, it
season?
is about 20 degrees Celsius.
Nice. I would love to be in a place with like that at the moment. All right. So I think we'll just wait a few more seconds to give people the chance to log on before we start it off. We're all in place. Perfect. All right. Well, I think then let's welcome our attendees to today's session. So I'm Marie, I'm the TFF Engagement Officer, and very excited to kind of start this session off. So today, thanks for joining us for this open conversation on the circular economy of food case study with Agricycle Global, who are our Thought for Food Boost team, and we're also shortlisted for the Circular Economy of Food prize that we ran in the TFF Challenge. And this call today is the first of a series of 3 that we are running this week. So if you like what you're hearing now, please do join us for the next 2 as well. They all build on each other and are there to kind of tell you a little bit more about what circular economy is, get you excited and inspired by what others have been doing. And of course, they're a chance for you to ask questions to our lovely speakers as well. So today the session will be hosted by Simona Grande. And Simona, who's based in Italy, she believes in the power of experiential learning as a driver for innovation and change. And she's a researcher with a background in management and food innovation. She's very international, having worked in China as a consultant, in India for Ashoka, in South Africa, and as well as Mexico, as part of the Global Entrepreneurship Summer School. And actually in the past 5 years, she collaborated with different food organizations, interviewed 500+ food experts globally, and coordinated teams of researchers in various research areas. But her current focus, lucky for us, is circular economy. And so we've invited her to host these sessions, and she's also been involved with Thought for Food as a mentor during our challenge. So Simona, it's a pleasure to have you here, as well as Ashlie and Patrick. Over to you.
Thanks, Marie, and hi, everyone. So welcome to the first session of the Circular Economy of Food Special. First of all, thank you to the TFF team for inviting me. And so today we have the pleasure to interview Ashlie and Patrick from Agricycle Global. Agricycle Global creates fully traceable and ethical products, empowering over 11,000 rural farmers worldwide. We will talk about how the team has implemented circular principles in their business model, but also roadblocks and opportunities they had to deal with. So I would love to start off with you telling us something more about you, where you're located, how did you start with Agricycle Global?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for having Patrick and I here, and thank you everyone who is with us today. So I'm Ashlie. I am the Director of Impact at Agricycle Global. As Simona mentioned, we sell ethically sourced and upcycled brands from around the world, and we do this by utilizing simple technology that requires no electricity to eliminate natural food loss and empower rural farmers. I really came to this by connections. I had the CEO and founder on a podcast that I work on, and I was just really engaged. I had previous experience with international affairs and had been doing more local stuff, so I was excited to re-engage with something that is challenging my brain and helping me learn new things, meet new people, and learn new concepts. And I am based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where we're headquartered. And I am the Director of Impact, so I work very closely with our global team to ensure our business model and our impact model align. And I also work with building out our strategic partnerships and identifying and pursuing non-dilutive funding streams for our long-term growth. And I'm joined today with Patrick, who I work very closely with. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Patrick.
Yes, greeting to you all. It's interesting to be here. It's a good thing. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Patrick, as I've been introduced by Ashlie. I'm the Director of East Africa, Agricycle Global, working in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, where we are working with rural farmers who are producing a variety of products for the company. I have about 15 years experience working in the non-governmental organization sector. I have a master's degree in entrepreneurship, did a thesis in social entrepreneurship. I have a very strong belief that for the issues that are facing Africa, market-based solutions are what is going to address them, and they need to be sustainable. They need to be conserving the environment from which we are in. So this is a great opportunity to share how Agricycle is participating in CEF, and I believe that we will be able to talk more about it as we move.
Definitely. Thank you very much for the introduction. So all our attendees can get to know you better and know your stories. I would like to talk a little bit about the supply chain. So you cover the entire supply chain. How are you implementing circular economy of food principles in the different parts of it?
Thank you so much. There are different ways that we're going to share on that issue, but about 4 levels of circular economy of food that are applicable in our company and in our model of operations. If I could start with the first one on the closed loop of nutrients and other materials. This is basically making sure that the resources, natural resources that we are utilizing are not degrading the soils that we use for our continued growth. So we are applying different aspects of practice in that line. The most important one being on conservation agriculture, where we are partnering with different organizations in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, partnering with government institutions, partnering with even individuals. One of our employees in East Africa, he has a degree in agriculture, focusing on organic agriculture. And what we do is that because we have a wide network of farmers that we work with, we ingrain these skills of conservation agriculture into them. But we go beyond that, where we try to sensitize government agencies on the need to adopt and have past policies on conservation agriculture. We train a lot on good agricultural practices, because conservation agriculture, good agricultural practices go beyond just conservation agriculture. All of these at our level, at our production level, is to ensure that we are retaining as much as possible within the ecosystem.
Yeah, so then the next kind of principle that we are really focused on is the cascading value of byproducts. So almost all of our entire model is transforming waste into market-based solutions. And right now we have 3 main brands. I'm just going to share my screen very quickly to, let's see, kind of share this a little bit more. So right now, Agricycle Global is the parent company, I guess, like it has a portfolio of brands. And we have the Jolly Fruit Co., Tropical Ignition, and What the Fruit. And all of these can be made as byproducts of one another. So it's really taking the entire fruit that would otherwise go to waste and utilize it for multiple products. And that's a really big way that we are implementing the circular economy of food principles. So I'll give you a great example is the Jolly Fruit Co. Let's say we have a mango, and the mango would have gone to waste. It wasn't going to be selling at a local market, and it would just be rotting. So instead we take it, and the cooperative members will dry the flesh. But whenever you have the flesh that's dried, there's still skin and there's still the pit. So what we do then is we take the pit and we can mill it and we can turn it into flour. And that is alternative fruit flour that we're able to then also market and sell. So Tropical ignition is a little different. They're using coconuts and palm kernel shells. So that is really taking the waste from coconut shells and palm kernel in particular. But we can also do milling of that and make coconut flour. And that's going to be a later iterative of what we're doing. So that's like a really big part of our ethos, is taking all of a product and seeing what other additional byproducts you can make out of it. And so that's a really big kind of part of our ethos. And then the next kind of lever that we work on with the circular economy is the diversity of production. And also, just for everyone out there, there is a really great Medium article that's doing case studies of circular economy of food. And this is kind of what we're referencing whenever they're talking about the 4 levers of circular economy. So that third one is diversity of production. And what it's really about is like, how can you look at your supply chain and shorten all of the transportation and all of the things that you have to do. And because we're a vertically integrated supply chain and we oversee everything from start to finish, we're really able to limit the waste that happens within that supply chain. We're able to consolidate our transportation. We're able to cut out any middlemen, so we don't have to work with different entities. We don't have to like kind of oversee what their waste is. We're able to really engage in that ourselves, which also means that if we're identifying something that is more wasteful, we're able to pivot pretty easily. I would say easily in the way of like, we're able to identify that internally and make adjustments, which is really helpful, especially as being innovators and iterating all of this all the time, to be able to learn from our supply chain. And then going off of that, like I'll talk a little bit about the transportation. So we are with a wide network of smallholder farmers. It's really important to us. We're not looking at large farmers or plantations. We're looking at smallholder farmers, which does mean that they're in remote locations around the world. And so what we're able to do though, because it is one supply chain, we're able to have consolidation points. And then we're able to also, because we're drying fruit, there's less, we can have more in that transportation rather than having to take 3 trips and 4 trips. We can really just consolidate at one point, which allows us to limit our waste and limit our emissions as we do go through the whole transportation phase. So diversity of production for us is something that we're able to implement pretty well.
That's great, thank you. Would you like to show us some other pictures maybe of the products? I can see the attendees are very curious to see more.
Yes, absolutely. I just didn't have, I didn't know which pictures were going to be next. So let's just see, we'll just go through some of these pictures. So something we'll be also talking about that's a really big benefit of us, and we'll get here, but our global team is such an important component of what we do. I'm based in the United States and Patrick's based on the ground, and we have CDOs, we have food safety managers who are all local. And that's really important as we have all these different components and we're working with farmers all over the world. It's really important to have that local context. So this was in early March. This is kind of sad. This is our entire global team. And we were all together. We were supposed to be together all of March. But this was March 11th, and about 12 hours later, there was a lot of escalation with COVID. So we all left very briefly after this photo was taken, but so grateful that we were all together. And so these are some of our farmers. They're able to take the fruit and, do the production. Oh gosh, see, now it's going too fast. Oh, this is a GIF maybe, but this is, or this one is, but those are jackfruit. And sorry, I didn't realize that this was a GIF whenever I put this in. So this is a really cool thing, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I mentioned that we work with simple technology that requires no electricity, and that's a huge component of what we do. And these are our passive solar dehydrators. So you can see that they're very compact and able to be easily removed, be easily handled, and this allows us to have really good food safety standards. It allows us to have access to farmers can access this very easily. And this is just one tray. So you'll see these two right here. And with that, there's in one dehydrator that we have, there's 24 of those or 12 cabinets. So this one that does not have fruit on it right now would close on top of the one with fruit. And then you have 12 of those trays to make one dehydrator. Okay, I will stop there for now because I know that Patrick, well, actually, I want to talk about our packaging really quick. So that's where Patrick can come in because there's a fourth lever about the power of digital. And I want to see if we can get a close up on our packaging for Jolly Fruit Co. Because you'll see before I turn it over to Patrick, there's this component right here that says Find My Farm. And we have a really cool story around that program and how also our supply chain of being able to be start to finish allows us to have a program like that. So Patrick, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Ashlie. So going to the last lever, power of digital enablers, where you can see we have that sticker there, Find My Farm. And that is a whole technology in itself where we want to be traceable. We want the consumer of our product to be able to know exactly where that product came from, who is the woman who produced it. So in that scanner there, you will be able to get information about the exact cooperative and the women who work with us. We use that technology basically to be able to connect with the farmers, to be able to tell their story. But we are using technology basically to help us, connect more and learn more with about the people that we are working with. But one more thing that we are doing with Find My Farm is as we improve the technology, we want to be traceable up to the point of the tree that is serving you, so that our end user can be able to track way back to the tree that supplied the fruit. We have already set the system. We have already consulted with the technology providers. It is only now a matter of launching it to that level. And I think to our estimation that that is a big part of ensuring that there is transparency in our system.
Great, thank you very much. So when it comes to circularity, one of the most recurring themes is measurement. What are some of the metrics that you use to measure your circularity?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also something that I really appreciate of being part of TFF is this has really helped me because there's so many things that you can measure and there's so many different ways you can measure it. And it can get so overwhelming, to be completely honest, because there's just so much. And so one of the things that we've actually been able to tap into is resources through TFF. Whenever I was doing the digital labs, I went over all the webinars, and there was even a webinar about like measuring the circular economy. And then I was able to have a conversation with Ethan from How Good, who actually did that webinar. And what was really actually relieving to me is that some of what he told me, because I was like, there's so much you can measure. It's so overwhelming. We have this long list of what the things that we measure with economic, social, and environmental impact. And I was like, holy cow, this is so much. And Ethan actually, for our stage of where we are, really emphasized the importance of focusing on one thing that we can do really well, one thing that we can measure and be like, this is going to be, identify where in our entire circular economy, what has the potential to have the most carbon released into the atmosphere, what has the most like potential benefits if we can really focus in on this and adjust it. So that actually helped it become more digestible and helped us kind of go into our first step. So we have all of these things that we could and will someday measure to fidelity. But for now, we kind of were able to focus it on a couple things. So we are really focusing right now on our waste and loss diverted. because that's like really where we're focusing a lot, or that's where we can really have a lot of impact. So part of it is loss. So everything that we would, that otherwise would go to waste and we're transforming. Okay, let me step back actually. There's a difference between food loss and food waste. And I think that's important. So like in the US, food waste happens, 40% of food waste happens at the consumer end, where say I bought too many groceries and they're expired and so I throw them away. But actually in rural areas, and especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where we have the largest network of farmers, 95% of that is due to food loss, which means that food that's being produced never even makes it to a market. It's just not even, it's rotting at the farmer level. So that's an important distinction. And I'm sorry I didn't clarify that earlier, but so we're focusing on food loss, which is that's where we go to the farmer level. And anything that wouldn't be sold at the local markets, that's where we have that opening to create an additional market linkage and add value. But as I talked about earlier, even if we have a mango that has the that would have gone to loss, but we still have a little bit of waste there, we can make the byproducts. So we're measuring both food loss and food waste. So that's where those terminologies come. But to date, especially with Jolly Fruit Co., which is our main product line right now that's in stores, is we've had over nearly 500,000 kilograms of food loss diverted, which is really exciting. And that's something that was kind of an easier measurement for us to like just tackle. And then that has a lot of implications for the methane that is not being let out into the world because food rotting releases a lot of emissions. And then that goes into like also carbon emissions. So a couple of things is our technology uses no electricity. It's completely passive solar dehydrators. And so that allows us to not only take away methane from this fruit, but also we're not releasing additional carbon. And one of the ways that we're measuring that too, as a starting point, is comparatively to other methods. So we've done research on what like massive dehydrators and like factory dehydrators use, and we're able to kind of compare to what ours are. And then also something to think about is our transportation. I mentioned earlier that because of that, we're able to reduce how many trips we have to take and how we're able to ship it over. And a really good thing is that we have ports in Kenya that we can ship. So it's easier to do ocean freight rather than like if we were only in a landlocked country, we would have to be doing air freight. So we're able to kind of divert waste and release less carbon through those avenues. And then, one more thing. And then we also have our social and economic impact, which Patrick is really leading on in East Africa.
Yes, in East Africa, our strategy is what we call results-based model, where we are very much focused on the results and on aspects that are relatable to CEF. We are tracking them. One thing we are tracking is on the environmental aspects of it, where we want to estimate the amount of trees that we have saved through giving farmers an economic value to trees. And if I could give you a case study with Tanzania, a region called Kisarawe in coastal region, from afar, when you're approaching that area, you will see a big forest. But when you get close, you realize that that is a forest of jackfruits all over. But what is happening is because those fruits are not being consumed in the wider market, the local market is saturated. People are cutting down those trees, those jackfruit trees, very big trees, so that they can now start engaging in other forms of economic activities. So we are trying to track this is where now Find My Farm and tree to table aspect of our technology comes in, where we are moving to tagging the trees, the specific trees that are providing us with fruits, so that now we can be able to even very specifically say the number of trees that we've been able to save. We are also training a lot of farmers on aspects about environment, even, you know, just being in contact with these farmers. And what you would realize if you've been to Africa, and if especially rural Africa, is that there is very little penetration of even basic knowledge that would be very easily available elsewhere. Just being in contact with these farmers and even telling them the issues about climate change that are either new, or if they're not new, they're hardly understood. And we are able now to track how many people we've been able to talk to about that, and encouraging them to plant trees, and even hoping at some point we will be able to track how many trees have been planted out of that initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both. It's been very clear, and as Ashlie said, it's very interesting and very, very crucial right now to understand what to measure, and understand more and more what can be measured, and it's still not. So thank you. We have talked about supply chain and measurement. Let's now talk about another critical factor, which is language. How do you talk about your circular economy of food, and also food loss and food waste, with your various stakeholders, namely your co-workers, the farmers you work with, the partners, the potential funders, the public? What is your perception of the language needed for the circular economy of food? What language works and what doesn't?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that really made us think internally as a team when we saw that question. So to be honest, this has been a really great learning experience for all of us, because I think it conceptualizes something that we already had and we're talking about, but we didn't know that what we were doing was like part of the circular economy of food, which is an exciting way for us to be able to put into terms some of the things that we already talk about. But the first step really is internal. So we're working on the inside out. We are working on making sure that these lessons that we're learning through exploring the circular economy of food, through TFF, all of this are being shared with our team to start having common language that we all can center on. So we have some of the common terminology like food loss, food waste, rural smallholder farmers, like those things we're talking about already, but we're now starting to put them into the mindset and framework of the circular economy of food principles. So that's really our first step, is internally figuring it out, seeing what works internally. What is, whenever we're sharing our learnings out, like what's clicking with people, what is something that is, that could be like, oh, is this what you mean? So that's some of the things that we're working on still. And then that's when we're going to start working externally with, probably with our farmers, with our consumers. And we're kind of doing that right now, but not necessarily stating it as this is the circular economy of food. We're still in that process of learning internally to see what language really works with the principles that we're engaging in.
Patrick, would you like to add something about maybe your experience as well?
Perhaps the level I would add to it, and I'm sorry if I'm having a bit of background noise, is that we are conceptualizing what we've been doing all along, circular economy of food, only perhaps we have not, branded it that way, and that is what really it is. For example, if you look at our results-based model that we designed in a very participatory way, involving every single of our staff in East Africa, we are tracking some aspects of CEF. And so there is an opportunity now for us to communicate about CEF more to our internal staff, but also being more deliberate to talk to our farmers. Now actually it's not even 11,000, now we are at 16,000, where we will now go and talk to them even more about the necessity of the circularity of the economy. Emphasizing more on the aspects surrounding environmental impact of this approach to sustaining our economies. So we are still learning. There is still a lot of opportunities for us to communicate even more, but we've already started.
Thank you. So Ashlie briefly introduced the lessons that you are learning. So what are the key lessons that you have learned in this journey that could be maybe beneficial to others? What do you wish you had learned sooner, for instance? What would you suggest and recommend to the people listening?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think a huge benefit that we have is our global team. And like for anyone who can be very intentional about building your team, everyone should be, but like, I think that is a huge asset that we have, because our global team, and as Patrick mentioned, we even have like community development officers who are phenomenally, have a background in what we're talking about and are able to help us from from the level of the farmers all the way up to like where we're working in the US with branding. So it's really important for us to we are able to learn from everyone on our global team and provide that insight and have the historical context, have the cultural context that really helps us move forward. And without that, without their leadership, without our global team, without every single person having the ability to share and move our company forward, we wouldn't be here. So I think that's a really big lesson, because I learned so much from, a great example is I was talking to a community development officer whenever we were there, and she was telling me about challenges at the farmer level that I had never even heard of with reality. I've heard a lot of climate reality, all of that, but I hadn't heard of these particular pests that were harming the trees. And then she was able to explain to me all of this research too around it, and what are great solutions. And I was like, this is incredible. And you having that insight is so important. So I would say that's a really big lesson that I've learned, is having a global team that really allows for collaboration and insight, and all of us moving forward together is really important. And then Patrick, I know you have a lot more of practical, what are the lessons that you've learned?
Thank you, Ashlie. Perhaps one thing that I have learned as we've been working around these aspects is the need to get buy-in from stakeholders, and especially in our case would be the government, the various governments that you're working with. You will find that circular economy of food, the principles by themselves are they're innovative, but they're also disruptive, in the essence that they will need people to very radically start doing things differently. So you're talking about a government that, for example, has invested very heavily in chemical kind of farming, fertilizers and all that. And if I could give a cultural perspective in Africa, you will find that, okay, fine, we started being colonized by Europeans around 150 years ago, but before then, most of the farming that was happening was largely organic. But then it's been 150 years of intensive doctrination towards these linear kinds of economy, including farming. And so that is not an aspect that can be changed in a day. So what I think may need to be done, one, is to be patient, to be very patient with the local farmers, with the governments in Africa, but also to emphasize to them the need to really look at this differently. And that is calling into aspects of lobbying for policies that are friendly to this approach, and also bringing in players together. One thing I've realized is that even some of the partners that we've been working with in East Africa, they're doing things that are circular economy. When you look at them, they only don't call it that way, or they don't know absolutely. And they are working disintegrated. Everybody is doing their own small bit. So if there would be a way that these people, these organizations, these institutions would be brought together in Africa and start working together in one direction, we would achieve more much faster.
And going off of that, Simona, you had asked what do you wish you would have learned earlier? I think it's really important that we have this understanding and cultural context and have people like Patrick who are able to share that with us. And I think though, as innovators and social entrepreneurs, things move really quickly. And I think that I wish earlier we would have been like, okay, like what are these barriers that are gonna, like this mindset and this shift that's gonna happen. I think, yeah, that's just something to be thinking about from the very beginning.
Thank you so much. So last question from my side, and then we'll move on with the questions from the audience. Just to recap and also to talk about the next steps and the future. What do you believe is still needed for the transition towards circular economy of food? I know it's a very difficult question, but I would like you to tell us, how do you see the transition happening?
Okay.
Go ahead, Patrick.
All right, thank you. I think I would still emphasize on synergies with different institutions. For example, I would speak for Africa, who are doing the same thing, only that they either do not know or we are not working in a proper partnership. That would be very necessary. Two, it is now starting to work very closely with even grassroots communities, including farmers, and being patient with them in the process, because there's something new that they've not been exposed to. They've been exposed to very linear and unsustainable models for a very long time. And whereas they can see the value from, for example, if I could give my experience, you'll see that the farmers are practically giving you they can see the value. Somebody will tell you, in my farm, this is a 3 or 4 acre farm. I was able to get this bag of maize about 3 years ago, and now I'm only able to get 1 or 2. So they know that something is not working. It is only that they do not know what is not working, or even if they have an idea, they don't know how to go about it or how to do as a change. So I think it is important for there to be concerted efforts that is going to be taken out of big hotels and workshops where big organizations meet to discuss things, and it to be taken to the level of the grassroots community member who is most affected by this kind of situation we are trying to avoid.
Yeah, and adding on this, I'm super excited about Wednesday's discussion because I think this kind of taps on what I'm gonna say, but I definitely think like as the awareness and as the language and as it gets more at the forefront, I hope that it also goes to grant makers and investors to really invest in stuff like this and the circular economy of food, because it is, I mean, from a standpoint, it has a lot of benefits. I mean, more than just like the good for the climate, and it does have a lot of like long-term sustainable benefits. And I really hope that grant makers and venture capitalists really make a push toward that, because that would really help as we're disrupting the system. Like, to disrupt the system, it really does need a lot of support and energy around. And so that's going to be a really key component, in my opinion.
Definitely, that's for sure. So thank you very much. We're going to move on now with the questions from the audience. So I'm going to pick some in the chat. For example, we have Christopher. He's asking, how do you measure quality assurance and control?
Patrick, you want to take it away?
Right. You're meaning about quality assurance of our products from the farmers? I would imagine that's what they mean. And in that line that I will respond. One, our biggest investment in, for example, in East Africa is on food safety. We have about 12 employees actually in East Africa, and all of them either have very, very strong qualifications around food safety and standards, or we have invested very much in training them in that aspect. But we just don't just invest in our employees, but we also move to the community levels where we train them intensively on food safety. We have state-of-the-art, very, very well-equipped packing facilities where we ensure that all food safety standards are very well maintained. So we follow hazards analysis and control, critical control points. All those international food safety standards are very well observed in Agricycle.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have a question from Christine. So from Christine Gold, she's asking, how do you describe circular economy to the average consumer? And what resonates most from a marketing standpoint and really wins them over?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to how we were talking about like internally and then externally. But for now, what we're finding is people are really engaged with how the connectivity of our products and like understanding that like, okay, here's what's happening and kind of the education piece of what is food loss, food waste, how does that affect the climate. And I think it's really interesting because that is a really big component of like our branding is an educational piece. And also our chief branding officer says this a lot of like, sometimes the consumers don't know what they don't know. So then it's like up to you to get it in front of them. And that's really a big approach to what we're doing is that education piece. And right now, what resonates with people is actually whenever you talk, not necessarily saying like, well, for us, and again, we're like learning this, but how, like, we're not necessarily saying like, oh, it's the circular economy. Here's what you're doing right now. Here's how it can be circular. It's more of like, okay, this statistic of like, okay, in the US, we throw a lot of food out at the consumer end. And people are like, oh yeah, I do that. Yeah, I know what you mean. But then thinking of it in terms of like, well, smallholder farmers have nowhere to sell the product. And so they're throwing out a lot of their food before it even hits to market. And I think we're actually seeing a lot of that right now. And I'll speak on like the US half, because that's where we're really marketing right now, is with COVID and this situation we're in. We have a lot of farmers here in the US who are having to discard a lot of their food. And I think that's actually allowing consumers to understand a little bit more about like how the linear system works, even if they're not seeing it in like that way, but seeing how much waste goes if there's not a strong market or if there's a lot of factors that you can't control.
Thank you. We have now a question from Morris, who's asking to learn more about your drying process and also which material you use for your packaging and how does the local farmer access them?
I'll speak briefly about the drying, but then Patrick, if you, and I can, well, Patrick, if you want to talk about the drying, I can actually talk about the packaging, if that works for you.
Yes, I can talk about the drying process. One, our drying happens right at the farmer level, where we bring farmers together into small cooperatives, and then we basically invest, as I said earlier, very, very intensively on food safety standards, trying to localize the standards to their circumstances while not compromising them. For example, we will move to a community before community supplies, as we will have worked with them, training them for up to eight to 9 months. So we invest a lot on those trainings. Of course, they need to be communities that have an excess production of a certain product of our interest. Then we come in with our dehydrators that are food safe, and we practically now start working with them in that aspect. In regards to the packaging that happens at the farmer level, the farmers do not do the final retail level packaging, of course, but we provide them. We are the ones who provide the farmers with the bulk level packaging materials that are picked on a regular basis. Then they are transported to our pack house and they are taken through several other food safety protocols just to ensure that whatever gets to the market is of the highest standard possible. It is a premium product, and we can assure you that is what it is.
And then going on to the packaging, I'm not sure that this is exactly what they're asking, but currently we print the packaging here in Wisconsin in the United States. But we're in the process right now as we speak. Actually, we're probably getting Slack messages about it, of getting local printers so that we can especially like eliminate that waste that has the transport of packaging from the US to where we are. But something that we're really thoughtful about is who we're partnering with shipping and with packaging. So something that's a reality and it's a challenge is that packaging can be really expensive, especially recyclable packaging. So for Tropical Ignition, everything, which is our coconut charcoal, everything is made from recyclable products and is 100% recyclable. However, Jolly Fruit Co. right now is actually a really big challenge that we're having is it's super cost prohibitive to have the packaging be 100% recyclable. And that's a big, I would say, an issue because we're like really looking for all the sustainability in every aspect. But something that we've done really thoughtfully is that the people that we're partnering with to design and print our packaging have a sustainability plan, and they have a plan to make all of their packaging recyclable by 2022, and then also finding ways in that process to make it not cost prohibitive for companies like us. So that was really important as we were identifying that right now we cannot afford additional packaging cost, but what we can do is be really thoughtful of who we're partnering with to make sure that we have this plan in place to work with them to get it recyclable. And as Patrick mentioned, it is all, we do package though in Consolidation Pack House in Kenya right now. That is also really it's very high quality food safety standards. And then we also are able to employ local communities to package as well.
Thank you. We now have a question from Sally, the CEO of Banu Indonesia. She's one of the finalists of TFF Challenge 2020. Very intrigued by your solution and asking, how do you establish your consolidation points? How do you determine the location and who do you partner with to establish them?
Well, consolidation points, let me start from there. One, for as much as we work with rural farmers, we do not work with them in a very scattered way. When we move to a community, we will bring local cooperatives together so that even when they produce in their small groups of 15, 20, 30 members, in that community, you will find perhaps we have about 300, 400. In one community in eastern Uganda, we work with about 2,000 farmers. So they are able now so we are in close proximity. So that way it is cost effective for us to work with them. It is easier for us to go pick their small products in their small cooperatives and bring them together in a consolidation point. Then we are able to transport that bulk product into our pack house, which is centrally placed, and the processing of it continues from there. I don't know if I've answered that question.
I think so. So I think we are approaching the end of the session. I would just like to ask Ashlie and Patrick, just to summarize, what are your next steps in your journey?
Yeah, thank you. Immediate next steps and kind of exciting is, so I mentioned that Jolly Fruit Co., which is our dried fruit brand, is on the market right now. And excitingly, our other two brands are about to be launched. So that's really exciting. And that is going to be our fruit flour line, which is the byproducts of the fruit that is being dried and being milled and then created and packaged into alternative fruit flour. And then our Tropical Ignition, which is our, here, I'm just going to pull up, sorry. I know that we don't have a lot of time, but I'll just give you visuals. and our coconut charcoal brand, which are grilling briquettes to be in for outdoors. So this is our grilling briquettes. And then this is a in-action photo of our fruit flour. One of our coworkers made homemade chapati bread, which is really exciting. One of my favorites from Uganda. And so this is out of breadfruit flour. So both of those will be on the market very soon. And as for the circular economy of food, really focusing on sharing our learnings with our entire team and getting those principles in that vernacular into our world for both internal and external purposes.
Yeah, in East Africa, it is expanding our product range because there are so many other fruits and products that are going to waste that we have not yet been able to take to the market. We are also expanding our market opportunities beyond the USA to focus more in Europe and Asia, specifically in Japan. And also local market in East Africa.
I was going to say, I'm Patrick and the local markets.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you to also the attendees that asked questions. So to recap a little bit, we had the pleasure to speak with Agricycle Global with Ashlie and Patrick. We learned about their journey towards circular economy of food. We learned about the importance of covering the entire supply chain, how crucial it is to have a motivated global team, the importance of leadership as well, and also how digital technologies can be enablers of a circular economy of food. So thank you again. Thank you to the people who followed us. Thank you to the TFF team. And our next session will be Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Central European Summertime. We'll be joined by Jeff Anderson. He's a serial entrepreneur and a member of the Food Lab Accelerator at Google. We will talk about how startups can incorporate circular economy of food principles and how investors and large corporates are currently seeing this topic. So I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much to all, and bye-bye. See you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.